Angie was really a huge inspiration for doing this. I had the honor of interviewing her for my podcast, The New Schools, maybe a year ago. And I always, of course, have loved free play, like who doesn't? But when I interviewed Angie, she really painted me a picture about what is happening with children who aren't given enough opportunity to play freely and to have freedom and autonomy. And so that just got me super fired up about free play. And I wanted to share this message with as many people as possible. So I decided to host the Chasing Childhood and then invite her to tell us her story. So I'm going to turn it over to her, Angie Hanscom from TimberNook.
Great. Yeah, thank you for having me. So I'm going to, briefly talk about my background and the story behind TimberNook and kind of in general, what I'm seeing with children. Usually when I do a presentation, it's, like an hour and a half. So there's a lot happening with children because they're not playing outdoors enough. My background is I'm a pediatric occupational therapist, and I've worked in all different settings. I've worked in hospital settings. I've worked with preemies when they first go home, in schools, but most of my experience was actually working in an outpatient therapy clinic. And a doctor will refer for occupational therapy when there's difficulty with attention, or there's some sort of balance issue or sensory issue. For instance, children don't want to get messy, or they're having trouble, with coordinating their body, that sort of thing. So my last job was working in a pediatric OT clinic. And when I just started noticing some interesting observations. For instance, one child came in to see me for therapy that didn't like wind in his face. And I remember kind of struggling with, how do I help that child inside a clinic setting? Traditionally, occupational therapists are actually indoors. We're again in hospitals, we're in schools, or we're in a therapy clinic, so we're inside treating a child. And, so just kind of struggling with how to meet some of the needs I was seeing. So that particular child, I was thinking, should I get a fan and blow, the wind on his face to get him used to it? A lot of kids not wanting to get glue on their fingers. But the number one issue that we actually have to treat is balance. So I remember sitting in a workshop, and an occupational therapist looked at us and said, kids are not rolling down the hills like they did years past. They're not climbing trees. And so the number one thing that we're going to have to treat is their, what we call the vestibular sense. And so that really struck me. And I kind of was just paying attention to some of these issues that kept popping up over and over. And so I have 3 children. I have 2 daughters. We were talking about this before we went live, that are teenagers, and I've got a 6-year-old son. But when my girls were really little, and my second daughter was born, I actually decided to stay home. I had no plans to work. And I just joined a mom's group because that was kind of the thing to do at the time. And I had people asking me, a couple of moms asking me interesting questions. Like one asked, why does my daughter spin in circles all the time? She's constantly spinning. And then another one asked me about her preschooler, and she said she's having trouble paying attention. You're an OT, can you help me? And so I was just, reflecting on some of these issues that were popping up. And then in the clinic setting, before I left, we kept hiring more and more occupational therapists, and we couldn't meet the demand. So the past 10 years, there's been a significant rise in the amount of sensory and motor issues we've been seeing. And it's really across the board. If you go on any pediatric OT chats, like kids are starting to not meet the demands that they could meet years past. For instance, strength, like grip strength. All these kids are popping up with issues. And so now we're left with an ethical dilemma of, do we hold them to the same standard, or do we change the norms? And unfortunately, we have changed one of the standardized assessments that we use because kids are just not meeting the demands from, about 30, 40 years ago. So again, just filing this information away. And then my daughter, who was 5, my oldest daughter was 5 at the time, again, when I stayed home, and it was time for her to go to kindergarten. And I remember the teacher meeting with us ahead of time with just the parents. And she looked at us and said, "This is not kindergarten like you remember growing up." She said, "This is really going to be more like first grade. We are not going to have time to teach your children how to cut with scissors." So she said, my husband's going to pre-cut everything at nighttime, so we don't have to worry about that skill. Then she said, "We have 5 minutes for snack." And at the time, this was just a morning kindergarten. It was before kindergarten became a full day. And she said, 5 minutes for snack. And if that gets in the way of curriculum, it will become a working snack. So they'll have to eat while they do their work. And then 15 minutes for recess. She said, "But however, when it snows," and I live in New Hampshire, so there's snow most of the school year. She said, "We won't be going outdoors because we don't have time to change your children into their snow gear." Finally, she said, "If they can't tie their shoes, please put elastic laces or Velcro on because we don't have time to teach your children how to tie their shoes." So this whole theme of we have no time for developmental skills kept coming up. And as an occupational therapist that works on developmental skills, this didn't really sit right with me, but I wanted to give it an opportunity. I loved learning. I grew up in Vermont. It was very play-based. We had, I think, an hour-long recess session. We might have even had 2. And I do remember using scissors because I cut myself and I went to the nurse's office. I remember learning my ABCs basically. And I remember the teacher singing Little Bunny Foo Foo like every day. So, very, very simple. So I wanted to give it an opportunity. But what happened was my daughter, about a month into the program, came home and said, "I hate school." And, she was 5. And so that broke my heart. And they were really pushing reading at that as well in kindergarten, and she wasn't quite ready. And it's ironic because she's like an all A student and very competitive now, but she was at that time, she wasn't ready for that kind of academics. So I ended up homeschooling for a couple of years and learning about different educational philosophies. And I learned a lot about Finland, where the kids were in the river, dissecting fish to learn about ecology. They would be barefoot in the school. They had like a 2-hour long, phys ed class, where they would go cross country skiing without an adult half the time. But they were testing higher with science and math than we were here in America. So that fascinated me. And I learned also a lot about Reggio Emilia, where the environment is the third teacher, and about the Waldorf philosophy, where there was natural rhythms and natural materials, lots of movement. And so that was one thing that I started to pay attention to. And the other thing that really struck me was that there was not a lot of children outdoors. So we live on 12 acres of woodland here in Hampshire, and we have about 50 acres of conservation surrounding us. So we really live in the boonies. But I take a shortcut to get to our neighborhood. A shortcut to get to our property through a neighborhood sometimes. And there's a bunch of children that live in those homes because I know a lot of the families, but I never see children playing outside. And again, growing up in Vermont, I remember biking to the store. I remember being out till the lights went off, that sort of thing. So I just remember it just struck me like, where are the kids? Why are they not outside? So I knew I wanted to do something with getting kids outdoors back then. And I thought it was going to be in the form of nature classes until I ran my first one. And I had a parent come up to me with her son in hand and said, "Can you please tell my son why the leaves change color?" And I said, "Oh, I think it has something to do with a pigment in the leaf." I was trying to remember from my science classes in like college and high school. And, but it took time to reflect on, what is my expertise here? I'm not a teacher, and I'm not an environmentalist or a naturalist. And really at the time, those were the professionals that were running nature programming. So I kept thinking, what does an occupational therapist have anything to do with nature programs? And what I've realized over the years is that the occupation of a child is play. And that's something we do teach in the field of occupational therapy, is that, play is a very important occupation for children. But we often, again, we're often indoors. And so we'll bring a little box of sand and call it sensory, and we bring it inside. We put our swings indoors. We bring up a box of games and we play inside. And so I kept thinking about the occupation of outdoor play. It's a very important occupation for children, but it's really at risk in ways that we never anticipated. And it's affecting development in so many different ways. And so that's kind of been the mission of our program. And around that time, I had a friend say, I think you should try summer camps, because I think parents will be more likely to drop their children off. And so she was in marketing. And so I said, okay, I'll do 1 week of camp. I was just going to do it for one summer. And she said, I think you have to do 3 weeks because it'll be more marketable. So I said, okay, fine, I'll do 3 weeks of camp. Then I went to the University of New Hampshire and I took occupational therapy students to help me, because I thought, what a unique way for them to see the outdoors for its therapeutic value. And so that first year I ran 3 weeks of summer camp, essentially by myself with some helpers, and I had no idea what I was getting into. Usually therapists work one-on-one with a child or a small group. We're not used to running a bigger group of children. So I didn't realize how much work that was. After the 3 weeks of camp, I was totally exhausted. It was successful because I'm always a determined person, but I was like, all right, I'm all done. I'm not ever doing that again. But what happened was those 4 OT students, it really opened their eyes. And so they went back to the university and they told other OT students, and I had 14 volunteers the next year. And then I had 2 teachers reach out, a wildlife ecologist who actually still works with us today, and he's the training manager here at TimberNook. And another teacher reach out. And one of the teachers said, wouldn't it be great to do stories in the woods? And she said, we could do, for instance, 3 little pigs. And we could do a little house out of hay at picnic tables, and do a little house out of hay, a little house out of bricks, a little house out of sticks after hearing the story. And I was like, okay. And I said, as a therapist, wouldn't it be cool to bring real bricks into the woods and bales of hay and huge sticks? Maybe there's wolf masks and wolf tails. And so they're living and breathing the story, building, engaging the muscles and senses and building life-size homes of 3 little pigs. And so that pre-literacy, replaying that through play. And she was like, yes. And so that kind of changed our first year. I was very much trying to do adult directed, engaging them in an activity. And the next year was very much about doing a play experience. So they don't necessarily bring the 3 little pig houses home, but they have a play experience here, something that is designed to create change in the child. And they're creating memories. And it works on everything from higher level thinking skills to that social emotional that we desperately want them to work on, but they have to do and practice through play, to engaging the muscles and senses in ways that we cannot replicate in a clinic setting. In our therapy settings that we think are sensory, there's no way we can replicate what happens out in nature and through big body play. So fast forward a couple of years, I kept saying I'll do it one more summer. And I released my camps in February, because in American camp culture, you have to release them way ahead of time. By 9:02, I had a wait list for all 4 weeks. And I had 2 parents call in tears saying, hey, my kids got into your program last year, but didn't get in this year. What are you going to do about that? And I was like, I don't know, because again, my plan was not to be working all the time. I was really wanting to just raise my children. And so I didn't want to run summer camps all summer long. And then I had a occupational therapist and a physical therapist reach out and ask, can we replicate this program? It's very unique for our profession. And that's when I realized that this wasn't about me. It was really a gift that I needed to share. And so I went and got amazing business mentors that helped create TimberNook and to license the program. Timber means woods, and nook means like a nook or cranny, hidden place, essentially in the woods away from the adult world. which is especially important, what we just went through with the pandemic, to be away from all of that and just be children. And so fast forward, basically I was going to start in New England to market this. And I wrote an article called Why Kids Fidget and What We Can Do About It. And you can look that article up. And that went incredibly viral. And it got picked up by the Washington Post, and that exploded. And so Times of India picked it up, Jerusalem Post. I did a TED Talk for Johnson & Johnson on their main stage. I think there was 100,000 people watching for that from Johnson & Johnson. And that's how the book Balance and Barefoot came about. And a couple of years down the road, we started to work with schools. So that's, you're going to hear from Anna in a little bit about how we started to certify schools to incorporate TimberNook programming during the actual school day and the benefits of that as well. So that's kind of the story behind how TimberNook started. And what I've learned is again, it's just one door after another opens, and that there's an incredible need for something for kids to play outside right now, more than ever.
Thank you so much, Angie, for telling us your story. I think most of us here are from an Acton Academy environment, and so we're going to definitely recognize the hero's journey nature of what you did, from starting in your own backyard and then ending up creating this huge thing for other people, to serve other people. So that's wonderful. Thank you. Do you have time for just one or two questions?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay, great. Does anybody have any questions for Angie?
Has there been any particular resistance? I mean, once it got big, because I'm just curious, like sometimes I feel like with these things, it's like, isn't this obvious? And it turns out it's not obvious. I'm sure you experienced that. Yeah. So I'm just curious, like, have there been times where people came away from the program and go, this actually didn't do what we wanted?
Not really. No, it's usually very, I think that sometimes people, like if they don't see it for themselves, like if they're removed from the program, maybe that might happen. But when you are watching the experience, so inviting parents out or teachers, it's very eye-opening, because usually the kids, it's one of those things you almost have to see it to fully understand the benefits, if that makes sense.
And is it just visceral? It's like so obvious to the parents. They're like, oh, my children, like, this is very obvious.
Yeah. And I think sometimes people forget like that they played outdoors and all the benefits from that. But usually, like when I do a talk and I take a deep dive, so that's just my story. But when I take a deep dive and I go, this is what we're seeing in the classrooms, and this is connected to, you know, what's happening with not enough playing outdoors, people are like, oh my gosh, like, and now there's a lot going on, especially with balance, and kids are literally like falling out of their chairs in school, running into each other more frequently. Like kids are just not moving enough. They're being like overly restricted over and over, and their access to play is incredibly restricted. And so that's affecting development in all sorts of ways that we never expected. And so that's a piece that's really important to kind of make those connections so people can see, oh my gosh, like I had no idea that was happening, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
She just mentioned something about how kids are being.
Thank you, Angie. I have a question, if that's okay.
Sure.
This is actually directly asking for advice, but I'm curious. So we've had our Montessori school for going on 7 years now, and we serve toddlers through 3 to 6 year olds, but it's fairly, it's not as strident as some Montessori programs might be. We have a lot of attention to what you're developing. And over the years, we've seen a lot of young children come in with a lot of what you're describing, and have tried to locally bring in occupational therapists or connect our parents to resources. Mm-hmm. And the therapists are telling us there's nothing wrong. But as professionals who've been in the field for 20 years, we're saying, yeah, no, there is. They should be able to do this. So do you have any resources or verbiage or things that we can do to help reach out to either, I don't know if they're younger therapists or if they just if the spectrum is so wide that what we're seeing isn't as important to them, or some way to help get that extra step to families who need it? Or
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I highly recommend reading Balance and Barefoot because well, first, if you don't have a lot of time, watch my TED Talk. I don't know, maybe we can put a link to that, but that will start to explain what's happening. And then if you have time, read Balance and Barefoot. That's a good resource for parents that need help. And it maybe they can't get direct, it's not enough to get direct occupational therapy, but they can do stuff in the environment to affect development. And especially like plenty of outdoor playtime. The problem is this is an environmental issue. Like what we're doing in society is, it's like very, like being on screens most of the day and not getting enough outdoor playtime is affecting all the kids now. So it's not just kids with special needs, it's like across the board. And so we really need to take a hard look at what is going on in our environment and start to change those things. Because you're right, therapists are very busy and they're only going to pick up the kids that really, and they're changing like milestones and stuff now, and again, like I said, a lot of the testing is changing. So yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, Angie, for being with
You're
us
welcome.
tonight. I really appreciate it. I will definitely, after this, tomorrow, I'll send out this video, the article that you mentioned, the link to your book and to your TED Talk, so that
Okay,
everyone
yeah.
can take advantage of all those amazing resources to help the
Give a
kids in
good
their
foundation.
community.
Yeah, great. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for having me, and enjoy the rest of your talk.
Thank you so much, Angie.
right.
Appreciate you.
Thanks.
Take care.
You too.
So great. So I wanted to invite now Anna Bayed, who she has actually, as Angie mentioned, has implemented TimberNook at her school. So I thought it would be a good segue to ask Anna about how she made that decision, how it has been, and what kind of results she's seen in her learners by having TimberNook at her school.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you all. We are on our second year of having TimberNook at our school, and I read the book Balanced and Barefoot, and it's something I want for my own children. Why? We have, my husband and I have 6 children, 1 all the way to 16. And I personally find so much frustration in the battle of the screens. And I don't think my mom knew where we were half the time growing up. We were outside, we were in the ditch, we were having dirt clod wars with the neighbors. I mean, we were outside all the time. And it's been such a shift in busyness after school, having so many after school activities, screens, that I really wanted to give not only my own kids, but the children at our school just this amazing experience with play. And I think not only is it my little boys who are 6 and 8, it's like their favorite thing all week at school. But what I've noticed is the social and emotional learning that happens when you're having to work with somebody to move the tire, or you're having to share the fort that you're building. And so I feel like our students have grown a lot just in that regard, in addition to the creative play that we have. We live in the desert, so we don't have a beautiful forest. We have a small area with trees, and it's nothing near as magical as what Angie has, but it's still very special for our students to have this great little play experience.
Thank you so much, Anna, for sharing that. And Anna, did you find when you first implemented TimberNook that kids just like immediately took to it, or did you feel like that was something that they had to kind of develop over time?
I'm thinking of one little girl in particular, and she was so prim and proper and didn't want to get dirty. Oh, I froze.
Oh, no, I can see and hear you.
Oh, you can still see. Okay, I froze on my side. She was so nervous to get in and actually play. And now I see her almost 2 years in, engaged, very social. So I have seen for some children, it takes a little time to get into the free play. But I think a lot of it honestly has to do with how they're parented. And for some of our learners, it was a hard transition for the parents. Like, why are they spending part of the school week playing out with tires and junk and different random things? Or parents being very nervous about, did they get hurt when they were out building the fort? And so parents learning to kind of step back and not be so, I don't know, wanting to bubble tape their kids, every move. I think especially moms with boys, you have to let your boys be boys and get out and play. So I think it's a bit of more of a learning journey for the parents than necessarily for the kids.
Okay, thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions for Anna about anything, but about how she's doing free play at school?
I don't have a question. I just, every time I feel like I've been doing these Acton things for like 10 years and I'm just baffled. How did we end up this way in society where you're convincing parents that your kids should play outside? Like, are you still convincing parents 2 years in that this is a good thing? By the way, we're still convincing parents. So you formalized it. So I'm just wondering, like, is it now they sort of get it?
I think as working in the school, you're always promoting your programs at your school and the why. I just think that's a natural part of working in the school space. I think most of our parents get it and absolutely love it and are so sincerely grateful that we've brought this program in. But you'll never have 100% participation in a school. I thought I could get there, but going into our 7th year as a school, I'm learning you will never win everybody over.
Do they have something else that they can point to where they would rather the child be doing? Like, instead of playing, are they saying like they should be doing more math or something? I'm very curious what they think the alternative is.
I guess I haven't done a deep dive because in my mind, it's like, this is what we're doing. You can get on the train or get off the train. By and large, most everybody has been just thrilled with the program. There's just been a couple of folks who have made little comments about it. So what we're always trying to do a better job of explaining the why behind the play. And I think that's where we could provide a copy of the book or more of an in-depth dive on why this matters. Next year, we're partnering with a local organization that does outdoor science learning and also a state park with one of the rangers. So we're going to be taking our TimberNook like on the road, and they're actually going to learn how to build real shelter, like animal tracking, all this really cool stuff. Since we don't have a large TimberNook space, we're going to be physically going out on hikes every couple of weeks and doing more nature exploring and maybe some camping as well. So I'm pretty excited about that.
This is kind of interesting. I'm just thinking through, I don't want to dominate this, but I'm thinking about like how big a deal scouting was growing up, either Girl or Boy Scouts. And that, unless I'm reading it wrong, has fallen off. And a couple of years ago, for some reason, I got roped into some Girl Scouts national stuff where they were trying to do all this STEM stuff. And I was like, man, this is getting weird. I didn't know people were like doing scouting so they could do all the STEM stuff. I thought we were the idea of scouting was this that we're talking about with TimberNook. Do you get a sense that people, they don't join scouting anymore, and so they really don't have a formal outlet?
I definitely,
we only have 1 or 2 of our learners who are part of like Boys or Girl Scouts. So I think you're right. It does seem like it's kind of passed away, but I don't know. I think there's so much pressure on parents to have their kids in all the after school activities, to have this high level of performance, you know, just to keep up with everybody so their children will succeed. And so I think you as a parent really need to shepherd your child's time after school in order to help them find things that actually matter. I think children's emotional health, especially coming off the pandemic, I'm noticing just anxiety, fidgetiness, you know, so many things that seem to have come front and center with kids. And I think being out in nature is so grounding and healing, and soothing, that it sets them up for a lifetime of making good habits just to be outside. So I don't know, we're living in a weird time right now, but hopefully more and more people are unplugging the Wi-Fi, like Shannon and I were talking about. That's what I do at my house. I go in and I unplug our Wi-Fi.
Yeah, maybe I would ask this question to the rest of the group. Like, do you yourself struggle with justifying going outside? Like, I go outside all the time. I just walk in circles outside. I love being outside. So it's like, to me, it's somewhat obvious, but I've seen other people, like adults, that just work, and it doesn't, they like, I can see it when they walk outside. They're like, I'm wasting time.
Yes. Yes. I get that. And that's where that learning self-care at a young age, and that play is good. We should all still play and not be so wrapped up in our work. And I struggle with that. I mean, I could go a whole day and be at my computer and not even go outside. It's terrible. I need to practice what I preach.
you know, I'm gonna field also what you said, Russell, about scouts. I put my kid, I live in El Salvador, so I'm in a different context, but the U.S. Embassy here sponsors scouting groups. And so I put my daughter, you know, I invited my daughter, would she like to do it? Sure. So she went to try it. And Scouts has so many rules now about protecting the kids that my daughter, of course, she's been at Acton since she was 5. So she was like, Mom, they didn't let us build the fire. They didn't let us do anything. It was all adult directed. Like, she was, you know, caught on to that immediately. And she's like, I don't even want to go back. So I think Scouts has been just watered down a ton. So that isn't even a good option if you were to go with that option, which is sad. And I want to also pick up the thread of what you guys just said about loving playing when you were little. In a parent meeting last year, we talked about free play, and I asked parents, and I want to ask you guys right now, to just remember back when you were little and think about your favorite things to play, and then just simply share them with the group.
I don't want to die. I have so many, even today, I'll just say today, we do a parents kids dodgeball game every year. We just did ours this morning.
Oh,
I'm like
fun.
the most feared parent, and I love it. And like, my body hurts so bad right now. But the kids, I mean, it's just, I don't know the way I do it, because I always was playing on the playground. I loved playground games. I loved tetherball. I loved Foursquare, soccer, like not because I was like super competitive. It was just running around and being crazy. And this morning, I'm just running around being crazy, like making up rhymes, and the kids love it. I think the other parents, for the first like 20 minutes, are like, is he okay? I'm like, this is what the kids want. It's also what I want. When else can you just run around and like yell crazy things and throw balls at each other?
Oh, that's so fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Anna, similar to you, we're in a very desert climate. It's not beautiful. It looks like the world, like the earth hates us here. It sounds terrible to say, but it's basically brown dirt. All the plants are pokey. It's not this lush, inviting nature bathing situation. And I grew up out here, and my memories though are like I would just ride my bike forever after school. And it was really clear, like I couldn't go past this main street and I couldn't go past this main street. And I would go to friends' houses, but we didn't do anything. We would just all ride our bikes, just constant movement. And I also remember walking through the neighborhood and just like letting my imagination soar, where I would pretend that the coiled up water hose was a snake and that I was in a jungle because this house had a tree, and knowing that special magical space that I feel like particularly the elementary child inhabits, where they get to have one foot in fantasy, but be cognizant of the fact that they're making it up, but still just live there and put that on and take it off. And I don't remember playing games like you're talking about, Russell, or that kind of thing. That's what I spent every day doing, you know.
Yeah, you're just making me relive like we used to just roll down this hill called the Green Belt. We just roll down the hill. All we do is roll down the hill. Why? Because it's a hill. Like you're just making me think of that, rolling down, and then I pick the dandelions. I just lay there picking dandelions.
If I can say something too, I really appreciate this conversation. I really like this conversation and what Russell and yourself are saying, because I also like in person very much the fact that the kids are playing outside, and we have 2 kids that are going to an outdoor school. Has kind of also led myself to do a reconnection with what it was my childhood, which was somehow like covered up from a lot of dust from the years. Not that, I mean, I always appreciated to be outdoor and in the space outdoor when I was stressed for work, for school. I knew that my place was in a mountain, walking, hiking, going the nature, going the wood. It was though through the years somewhere not lost, but kind of not given the right priority probably on my life. And this experience with them, that they are 8 and 6 now, so has been going on for a few years now. It pretty quickly like rewoken in me that sense of pertinence of where we are, and where, as you say, Russell, where it shouldn't even be a question about it, because it's our nature, it's where we belong to, everybody. And so I think it's just like a simple, a normal, regular, natural deviation that we had that probably as a gender, human gender, and then we just need to find this opportunity to just refine a bit of ourselves. So I think it's just a reawakening for many people on that, and to understand this nature where we come from, and just to relieve that. And I don't know. I'm so grateful about these opportunities that we discovered as a parents, basically.
Henri, what was one of your favorite things to play when you were little?
Well, yeah, when I was a kid, really, I mean, it was a lot about. I grown up in a small town in a mountain in Italy, and was about grabbing a lot the bike, because I love to just get the bike after school and just go with the friends in the mountain, or even a small lake where there was where when I go back to Italy, I still go there every time, and just be there, enjoy. I'm not saying that I wasn't playing video game. I was also playing video game, but it's not like in my in my memories. My heart is, and I remember the smells in particular when I was in the pine, among the pines, is something that reconnect myself. And I know, I mean, I did a course on forest therapy. I know there are benefits involved with the health for each person, linked to anti-anxiety, anti-depression, not just for kids, as you were mentioning, but just for everybody. So yes, was simple things which I enjoy to do, and they just reawakening me through the kids. Just wanted to share that.
Thank you.
I almost feel guilty. I grew up in Colorado, so I was constantly in the Rocky Mountains. You guys are making me feel bad because as I got older and people are like, "Oh man, have you ever been to Colorado? It's beautiful." I'm like, yeah, it was. I was camping all the time, and I didn't know that there was a thing of forest therapy or whatever. But it's like I must have experienced that. So I know the smells you're talking about. Like there's nothing better than like a morning forest.
And isn't that remarkable that Henri said that he doesn't really remember the video game, but you remember the immersive nature experience because it is smell and taste and feel and sound, and it's just like involves so much more of the senses. It's so much more human.
That's what I think.
But you can't tell a story about video. I played plenty of video games. You can never tell anybody a story, but I can tell you a story of me like building go-karts and going down the mountain.
Yeah. Cool. Who else will share about their childhood playing? Oh, I think you're on mute now.
Yeah.
Natalie, did you want to say something? No? Oh, I saw your hand. Okay. Tammy or Taylor, Ana Maria, Rafael?
Well, I grew up in Venezuela, and also in a place that it was like a forest, like a tiny mountain forest. And I used to be outside the whole time, the whole day. Like I went to school and then in my bike, just the feeling of getting lost, like nobody was going there to see me, to check on me. I knew that I had to go home for dinner and just to play around, to feel free. And the smells of everything. It was like we had like an oranges growing around, and I still remember just to grab all the avocados, just to grab an avocado, and I used to go out with my salter, like with my salt, just to put it around and just to wait for one avocado to be ripping and just grabbing and eat it there. It was amazing, and I wanted that for my kids. So when I moved to United States, I was looking for something like that. Like I really didn't want to miss that for my own children, and so just looking for that. Is that how I went to the same school that Henry has saying, Enrica, that's the nature school. So my kids grew up in the same school. So it has been amazing. Just opportunity just to give them the same.
Thank you. Maybe that's a good segue into talking about how can maybe we can talk about what, as parents and some of us as school leaders, how can we, like, what are the barriers to providing more play? And then I was hoping that before we get off the call, that everyone could kind of brainstorm and think of 1 to 3 ways that they will try to foster more free play in their own life or in the lives of the families that they're surrounded by. So who will talk about barriers? I know Ana said that there is obviously screens. For sure, that's my biggest barrier. Huge barrier of children really loving video games and being on them too much time. And then also what Angie mentioned is that when they do go outside, there's no one there. And so that has been hard in my personal life. At school, I have a great degree of control. So I've been able to put in a lot of free play. After talking to Angie, I instituted 90 minutes a week where we go to a local park and they just have free unsupervised play. It's been absolutely incredible. They look forward to every Wednesday afternoon like nothing else. And we all do. It's like once we get there, it's just relax and feel that connection with nature. It's fantastic. But yeah, so what are your challenges and how might you change things to get over those challenges?
One thing I'm noticing with my children is that the best thing I can do is model good choices. And so if I'm griping at them, you know, get off your phone, go outside. The other day, my daughter was like, well, Mom, you're on your phone and I don't see you walking outside. And I'm like, oh, touche. So one thing as a family, what we're trying to do is like just go out in the backyard and do kickball, or, you know, go to the park or go for a hike, but really trying to lead by example, and trying to talk to the kids about healthy boundaries with screens, so that way they are doing other things besides just staring at the almighty screen.
I think in these big cities, because we're in Los Angeles, I think parents have this way over conservative view of safety. I think they're deathly afraid of their own city. And I haven't figured out how to do that other than how to get over that other than encourage middle-aged people, like, get out there, see that it's not actually scary. Yes, Venice has a bizarre population of lots of people doing lots of random things. I lived here for 20 years and nobody's mugged me. Like nothing. I see kids, you know, out there doing things. Something has happened to where I think adults think the world is out to get them and thus out to get their children, where it's like, sometimes I can see children who want to free play and they want to be outside, but they're pulled back. So I don't have a solution other than, to your point, model the behavior, like show people that it's not like, I can actually sometimes, I'm not admitting that Danny's not on this call, so I hope she's not watching this video. It's okay to leave your car unlocked sometimes too. People aren't going to steal stuff.
Also, I think that to go first to find families and people that are around you that have the same philosophy, so you can go out with them and just try to spend plenty of time outside, unstructured time outside, that you go outside just for the fun of it together and to not plan anything in advance, just to go to a park. And if you can pick the same park every day you go, every time you go, so that really gives the children the sense of that they belong to that place and they know it. Because some of the things that I have seen is that some families, they want to do so many things and to get to know so many nature places that it's beautiful and you are connected to nature, but then you are missing that belongingness, like that sense of like, do you really belong to a place that you know it so much that you know what is the best place to hide, what is the best place to do a shelter, and then what is the best place to play something. So just to be there and really to enjoy the time with your children and other families in the same place every time you go.
That's a great point. That's a really good point. Like I have lots of, you're right. I know families that they're constantly looking for the new hike. They're going everywhere for a new hike. I'm like, wait, isn't that stressful?
And I think that is what some families are transmitting to their children, that it's everything that is also always something going on somewhere else, that you have to look for something else, and the next class and the next meeting and the next thing. And our life as adults is also like that you are missing from something. So you can see how the children are having this feeling of that they are missing something if they don't do something. But when you start relaxing and getting to know and just giving you the time, the freedom to to just enjoy the time together, to pick always like routines are good for a reason, because that gives you that safetiness that you need, that you to be yourself, to create. So that's one of the things that I really suggest. That's why, like, even though we go to field trips sometimes, we are a nature program, so we are 99% of the time outside. Okay, we have an outdoor classroom, everything is outside. We are in a urban farm, but we go sometimes to different places for field trip, but we like to go always to a same part where our program started. So because the kids there, they love it. They feel like, oh, this is our house, it's our backyard, no? And it's a part from the city, and it's a beautiful, and it has like a forest, and it's big enough to get lost at some point, no? But they know it so well that you know that they're not gonna get lost. So that's great, just to go back there to have that feeling.
Those are some really great points. Thank you.
I also would like to add something. I'm working at the same place with Anama, but I'm working with families that are with babies. It's a parent and child program. So we are accepting babies from 6 months to 3 years old is the program that I'm working to. So one of the things that we see a lot on the parents is they are afraid of nature. Is that spider gonna kill my child? Is that a snake gonna strangle my child? So it is like they are afraid to lose something. So once they are getting used to be and enjoy nature and to trust to nature, they are relaxing and they are passing that message, like on a spoken message, to their children. So the children are starting feeling like in their nature. They are not afraid. They feel just part of the forest because it's just on us. But the parents are the ones that are like overprotective, and they don't want to overprotect. They are super open to be there, but it's just something that they need to learn how to handle. So it is. They love nature, but they need to protect their kids. Is one of the things that I've been feeling with, and we are trying to like rewire that print that we have.
Orso, are you finding that just with exposure to it that they're becoming more comfortable, or are you doing some kind of communication with the parents so that they to help them along in the process of becoming more comfortable?
Yeah, of course we are helping them, because we are like teaching them what is the plant that they can touch, what is the plant that they really can't, or how to recognize them, and what are the simple rules that you gotta follow once you are outside. Let's say just a thunderstorm, you gotta hide. That's the only thing. For the rest, you can enjoy. So it's part of that. We are teaching them the environment, they need it, and then just let them release all the fears that they are carrying with them.
Thank you. Who else would like to share?
I feel for fellow Actonites, I feel like very victim-y right now, but I'm not trying to point the finger of things that, hold on. So someone's got to say someone special. Hi. Levon needed to say hi to everyone in Raphael. Okay, Papa's got you. But I feel like city planning, so like on a higher level, when I think about the way our town is constructed, it's very difficult. Also, we have a very transient town, so we're primarily an oil industry town. So a lot of families are moving in and they're moving out about every 2 years. So there's not a real strong sense of place in most of our housing developments and communities. And there's been a lot of effort to put like swimming pools in, but as far as creating neighborhoods that are ripe for exploration, right? Like where you can go ride your bike and get lost. What we typically end up with is like neighborhoods just house. So even if we're sending our young people out, they're just ending up back in the house because the designation of space hasn't been valued by the community over time in their planning. And I'm not real sure what to do about that. I just see that as a constraint for a lot of families that might otherwise be open to it. But the pathway to make it happen is and Raphael happens to live in the same town as I do. So I don't know if that resonates with you or your experiences with the parents or not, but I look at our city, and unless you're in certain places, it's really hard to get past that barrier. So equipping them somehow to do that, or I don't know what it is.
What town are you in, Natalie?
I'm in Midland, Texas.
Okay.
So we're right there. We're the Permian Basin, the kind of like the oil capital of the US. So
Okay.
Yes, I think I agree with what you're saying, Natalie. And I'm a typical example of a transient person that moved into Midland 2 years ago and wasn't too sure what to look for when I came in. You know, you come into a new place, you have to find a house, you have to find it kind of fast because you don't want, you want to move your family the most efficient, best way possible. And now 2 years down the road, I'm like, I would not choose this neighborhood for this, and this reason. I would look elsewhere, for a lot of those reasons. I really want to be close to a park where my daughters could just walk or ride their bikes to a park. And where I am, it's just newer houses. It's just brown, like there's just nothing. So you ride around trucks, because most people have trucks for work, and most of the time there's really not many kids outside. So I don't know. I know I would look for something different, if I was moving back again here. But it's hard to know when you get to a new place. And the environment, for my part, coming from plants in a very lush, green, hilly, rivers, I struggle with the heat here. So I'm my own barrier. Like after school, do I want to go out right now? And it's still like 100 degrees. Honestly, this week is 100 degrees and there's not a cloud in the sky. And I'm like, no, I don't want to go out. And I'm not going to ask you to go out and ride your bike around a brown neighborhood. It's just difficult. So we do a walk like early in the morning on the weekends to dog park and things like that. You try to find your little niche, but it's not exploring. Definitely not. So I think I'm my own barrier because I find it hard to find, and I still go outside quite a bit, but I find it hard right now when it's so hot. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your challenge. Yeah, I think there are challenges. So maybe we can all find creative ways of allowing free play so that our kids can have that experience and all the health benefits from it. So guys, we've reached time, and I know I want to respect everyone. I know y'all have children. You probably need to get to have dinner and everything. I know 2 people just came on the call. I think maybe there was some confusion about the time zone, but we have recorded everything. So I'm going to send it out to everyone tomorrow so you can watch the recording. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and for sharing, for opening up your hearts and telling us about your past experiences playing. I think that's always my favorite thing to hear from people. It really changes the tone and changes the way that people feel to remember that, which can be an invitation to take us back outside and allow us to play. Thank you, Anna, for coming and taking your time to tell us about your TimberNook experience. I really appreciate you, and for everyone for participating. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate
everybody.
this.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Everybody go have fun now.
Yeah, let's go
Yes,
have
go in
fun.
the forest.
I'm gonna go throw
Sure.
dodgeballs at my kids while they're playing Minecraft. Bye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.